sponsored by our partners, the Workforce Development Board of Ventura County. My name is Anna. I'm the digital media and event strategist here at the California Employers Association. And again, we want to just thank you for taking time out of your day to train with us today. Before we get into today's training, a couple details to go over with you if this is your first time with us. So as you see, your audio is muted for today's presentation, but there are going to be lots of opportunities to engage during the training, and we hope that you do so. If you do have any questions about the content, you can put those into the chat box or the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to address them as we go, or we'll certainly leave some time at the end to make sure that those questions get answered. I'll be here the whole time supporting Mary, so just go ahead and fire off those questions and we'll get you taken care of. Handouts will be dropped into the chat box shortly, so once you see the little icon and PDF name pop up, you can just click on that and it'll download locally to your drive. Again, I'll be here the whole time. If you have any issues, I'll make sure that you get that PDF one way or another. As you saw when you logged on, the webinar is being recorded and the team over at Ventura County will be reaching out when that will be available for review. So make sure you are active on their list. And then last but not least, we will be inviting you to share your feedback at the end of stage training by participating in a very brief survey. It's only 5 questions. Takes about a minute to complete, but the feedback that you share with us helps us make sure that we are meeting and hopefully exceeding your expectations with trainings like these. So at the end, you will see a slide with a QR code, and I'll also drop a link into the chat for your convenience, and we hope that you'll take a minute to help us help you. So again, our training today is brought to you by our partners over at Ventura County, and today we are so happy to be joined by Colleen Smith, who is one of the business solutions specialists there, who is going to be able to share more about the resources available to employers like yourself. Good morning, Colleen.
Good morning, Anna. Thank you for having me today. Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Smith. I am the Business Solutions Specialist for the Workforce Development Board of Ventura County. Today, I just wanted to quickly highlight one of our services. It is the Human Resources Hotline. It is a hotline that employers in Ventura County can call any day, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 to have any of your HR related questions answered. Thank you, Anna. So there is the phone number right there, 888-763-3174. Again, you can call Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You will get a live human being. You can receive guidance and ask questions about hiring and firing, paid sick leave, employee handbooks, harassment prevention, any human resources related questions can be answered. So we highly encourage you to utilize this wonderful hotline, and please feel free to share it far and wide with all of your fellow employers and businesses. I will also put my contact information into the chat, as well as our Business Solution Services Guide. So at Ventura, with the Workforce Development Board Business Solutions team, we offer many services to employers and businesses, often at no cost. So like I said, I will put my contact information in the chat. Please feel free to reach out via email, text, call. I will be happy to set up a time to speak with you and let you know about all of our wonderful services. So with that, I will send it back to Mary with CEA. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Colleen, and your entire team over there behind the scenes for everything that you do for Ventura County employers. I would now like to introduce our trainer today, Miss Mary Bradford, our Senior HR Director. So you're in great hands. And maybe if you have called that hotline, you've had the pleasure of working with her, but I'll hand it off to Mary.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you both so much. Really glad that everyone's able to join us today. Appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to come talk HR with us. I know we like to get you for an hour and give you as much information as we can. So we're going to talk about some great stuff in managing remote employees, but here's the good news. This will also apply to your in-person employees, so you can use this information however it works best for you and your team. Let me give you a quick introduction into CEA. If you're not as familiar with us, we are the voice behind the HR hotline. You can visit our website at employers.org. I encourage you to check it out. We've got a lot of great information out there. We have newsletters, we have blogs. We will keep you up to date on all of the changes that happen in California when it comes to HR and labor laws and all the things that you have to manage as an employer. And our job at CEA is to try to bring you peace of mind. So we try to do that through the hotline. You've got that hotline number. Again, give us a call Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We have an amazing team that will be happy to help you. You will see on all of the slides a different 800 number. We do ask you to call your specific Ventura County number, and that's the 888 number. So make sure you give us a ring on that number just so we know where you are calling from. Also wanted to show you, these are a couple of our members that we have, and you're probably familiar with several of these businesses. We work with businesses all over California and businesses that are located outside of California that have California businesses. So we support a wide range, everybody from dental societies to food companies to restaurant chains. So we know what you're dealing with because we've talked to all different kinds of businesses. So feel free to give us a call anytime you have questions. We would love to help you out. And then a real quick legal disclaimer. Just keep in mind that CEA is not a law firm and our team are not lawyers. So when you're calling, you're not getting legal advice. You are getting HR best practice, lots of options, lots of information, because ultimately any of those decisions that you make regarding your employee are up to you. So we won't tell you what to do or not do. We will give you options and information so that you can make the most informed choice for your business. If you ever do need to consult an attorney, which you sometimes do in California, we recommend that you have an attorney you work with. If you ever need one, we do have several partners listed on our website at employers.org under the partner page. So feel free, you can always reach out to them if you need a little extra assistance. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about this crazy virtual world that we live in and how things have changed so much in the past 5 years. I want to give you some tools and strategies for how you can keep your employees engaged if they are right next to you or across the country or across the state. And then also I want to talk about some ideas for retaining employees. We know the work world has changed quite a lot, and as with everything, as the economy changes, as the world changes, sometimes we are having a hard time finding employees. Sometimes we have employees that are tempted to leave to go to potentially greener pastures. But what we want to do is talk with you about some of the tools that you can use to make sure that you're really holding on to your great employees, because we know how expensive and how time consuming employee turnover can be. So a couple of ideas to make your life a little easier. So as Anna started off using the chat box, we're going to use the chat box a little bit today because we would love to hear from you. Feel free in the chat box, you'll notice there's a way that you can send it just to host and panelists, or you can send it to everybody. So if you would rather not everybody sees your responses, that's perfectly fine. Just send it to host and panelists, or you can also select that everyone option. I won't use names or anything if I'm sharing anybody's thoughts. But I want you to kind of start thinking about what has or has not been working for you in the hybrid workplace. And I'd love for you to share in the chat box how you have been able to stay connected to your employees, and also what have been some of the challenges in trying to stay connected to your hybrid employees or your remote employees. I know for a lot of you, maybe you have employees who are in the office maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and then they're remote the rest of the time. Or maybe they're only coming into the office once a month or once a quarter for meetings. So I'd love for you to share, and I'll kind of share it throughout our training today, anything that you recommend works really well, and then any of those challenges that you've had, and we'll see if we can address as many of those as we're going through. So here are the olden days, everybody, looking back at this vintage picture of when we all used to sit in an office together where we would meet every single day and have a lot of meetings. But we know that is not the reality. This is the reality for a lot of us right now, or just like what we're doing today. We're sitting on a webinar. We've got people working from home. We've got people who have interesting backgrounds and perhaps some that have more plain backgrounds, people that forget to turn on or off their backgrounds. That's all what we're dealing with today. We deal in webinars, we deal with chats, you might be using Slack or Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all of those different resources that you might be using. So it's a little different. So what I want to start by doing is giving you just a couple of suggestions on how to stay connected in general, if you're hybrid, if you're remote, and just kind of those tools that you can use as like a little cheat sheet. So the first thing we always recommend is try to engage in a little bit of small talk to start the call. Now, this can get tricky because sometimes people will run away with meetings doing nothing but small talk. But just spend a couple of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, where you just maybe ask people about the weekend, or you can ask people to say, hey, what's a great book you're reading right now, or a great TV show or movie? Sometimes it can just get the dialogue going. It can also help people who might be distant feel a little more connected to their coworkers, because they might put a show that they're watching right now that they really like. And someone else thinks, oh my gosh, I'm watching that show too. I had no idea you would have been interested in that. And then that can just be a little connection for them. You also want to make sure we're always acknowledging milestones. Sometimes those get missed when people are remote. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Give people options. We're going to use a poll today. You can use a polling feature. You can have people use thumbs up, thumbs down. There's all sorts of emojis you can use now. That can get people a little more engaged. Also, whoever is leading it, or whoever might be in person, or a group of people, make sure that they don't dominate the conversation. Make sure that everybody, remote and in person, is able to contribute something. And the other thing to remember is try to use positive language. So try to use language that's keeping things upbeat, keeping the meeting moving forward. Sometimes it's kind of tempting to dwell on some of those negative things, but anything we can do to talk about really the positive aspects of why we're meeting over Zoom, or what we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish, that can really help get that meeting going and helping people stay connected. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through all of our topics today. So sometimes it helps when we're trying to figure out how to get people to stay or how to stay connected, is we need to find out, why are people leaving? So what is the reason people leave organizations? I know a lot of people think number one is compensation. It's actually normally not the number one reason. Of course, it's very tempting to move to a new job that's offering you a lot of money or different benefits or a signing bonus or something like that. But you might be surprised to find out that more employees will stay where they're at if the needs that they have are getting addressed. So we want to make sure, when we're trying to figure out how can we keep employees stay, we want to know why they're leaving. So it can be money, it can be benefits. Benefits can be very important, healthcare benefits, EAP benefits, flexible scheduling benefits, those kind of things. But the number one reason people normally leave falls under often management, that there's an issue with their management or their manager. So maybe it's that the work environment isn't making them feel part of the group because they're remote. Maybe they don't feel very secure in their job because people aren't sharing all the information about what's going on with the company and they feel like they're being left out. Maybe there aren't as many opportunities for them to have professional development or growth. So we're going to talk about those things today, in addition to flexibility and how important it is to make sure we're keeping people connected, because we really do want to retain our best employees. As you all probably know, it costs 30 to 40% of someone's annual salary to replace them. So that's the cost of losing them, extra work for other employees, and then going out to recruit, and then lost time, productivity, all those kind of things. Because the workforce needs have shifted, and we need to make sure we're being in tune to that. And so we need to figure out why they're staying. And here are some of the main reasons. It's based on culture. It's based on having a good manager who utilizes empathy and those empathetic skills, and engagement. So if people say, why am I leaving? A lot of time, again, it's the culture, it's the management. They're not feeling that connection to those people. 92% of people say they would stay if their manager was a little more connected, and you're going to be connected by having some empathy for what your employees are going through. And again, people are going to stay if they feel as if they are engaged at work. So if there's something interesting for them, something filling their days, filling their times. We don't want people sitting at home being bored out of their mind doing things that they hate. So that's why we need to make sure we're finding out what works for them and what works for the company. So this is where we want to talk about engagement and keeping our employees engaged. So we have a poll for you today. It's just a real quick poll. And I would like to ask you, how engaged do you think your team is, just in general? Your in-person team, your remote team, just thinking about all of your employees, no matter where they are located. Do you feel that they are super engaged? Do you feel that they are not engaged? Do you feel that they are actively disengaged? Or are you not sure? And if you're not sure, that's perfectly fine. We're going to talk about some of the things to look out for. And in just a second here, I'm going to show you what all these different kind of categories can mean. All right, we've got some answers coming in. Good. It looks like, okay, fantastic. I'm going to give everyone just 5 more seconds if you haven't had a chance. Pick your favorite option. Let's see. Almost there. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and end it there. Let me share these results with you, everybody. So it looks like about 67% of you feel your employees are engaged. It's fantastic. Really, really good. About 25% of you feel your employees are not engaged, and that might be okay. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. And then you think about a little less than 10% have some actively disengaged employees, and no one is unsure. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that poll. So let me show you how it breaks down for most companies. And this is why hopefully many of you are going to feel very good about yourself here. So when we're thinking about what it means to be engaged, engaged employees are very loyal employees. They are super engaged with what's going on. They're coming up with ideas. They're coming up with new ways of doing things. They are staying with the company for a long time. They're coming up with processes, changes, working well with all of their employees. So it's normally only about 31% of the population of your employees is engaged. So we have much higher numbers, which is fantastic. Then we have about half of our employees who are not engaged. Now, not engaged sounds a little more negative than it is. These individuals are still productive, but maybe they're just not as connected. So these are the people that are getting their work done, but you just don't get that kind of that extra oomph out of them that you might be looking for, or that our engaged employees have. They might miss some more work days, and these people are the ones that are kind of likely to leave, and they might be looking, it's just not working for them. Then we have normally less than about 20%, but we were right around 8%, which is fantastic, of employees who are actively disengaged. So these are people, they're there, but they're not really there. They're unhappy, and they want to make sure everybody knows that they're unhappy and that they don't enjoy their work, and maybe it's below them, or they don't get it, or they don't like it, or whatever it is. So obviously what we're looking for is we want to keep our engaged employees engaged. Those that are not engaged, we want to figure out how can we make them a little more engaged so that they're feeling more connected to the company. So when you're thinking about, and these are just questions you can kind of think about as we're talking, or what, and you're welcome to share them in the chat too, if anyone wants to share their ideas, are what are some of the characteristics of an engaged employee, or what do you see that works well at your organization, what people are doing that really think, gosh, they're really into it, they're engaged. If you think about yourself when you were highly engaged, and then what made you feel that way, or kind of how did that help you feel more positive about the workplace? And then how did that high level engagement affect your work? I know for the HR team, and I know many of you have talked to the different members of our HR team, we have people with all different backgrounds. We have people that have been in manufacturing. We have people that have been in construction. We have people that have been in the high tech world. So all of us have a very different background. And what's really nice is one of the reasons I think our team stays so engaged is we all have different kind of HR memories and history that we can pull on, and that we can create new products and new services for CEA. So I think that's one of the reasons our team stays really engaged. And it absolutely helps with productivity, loyalty. People want to stay around because we like coming up with new ideas, new training. This training is actually it's been updated. We've added a lot of information to this, so that kind of keeps us engaged, so that we're doing new things. Even if they already existed, we're updating and we're improving them so that we can make better products and services for our team and for our members and for all of our hotline callers, for everybody. So you may have heard of something called the Q12 survey. This is Gallup. Everybody has probably heard of Gallup. They're a big consulting company that surveys tens and hundreds of thousands of employees across the US. And they kind of break down this engagement into 4 different main categories: that there's hope, there's stability, there's compassion, and there's trust. And you have to have all of those components. And obviously that trust is at the base of the pyramid. So that's what's making us that foundation, making everything stay really solid. And as you can see, I'm not going to go over all these, but I think it's really helpful to kind of take a look at so you can see what are some of those components, or what are some of the things that employees say make them feel engaged. So for example, when it comes to trust, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. This is one of the best things I can encourage you as a manager and a leader, is keep asking your employees, do you enjoy what you're doing? Is there anything else you would like to do? Sometimes employees take on roles that maybe is not their strong suit. They're good at it, they can do it, but maybe there's something else that they would absolutely love to do, or they are just chomping at the bit to try something new. So that's a really important component to remember. We're going to talk about stay interviews in just a little bit, and also performance management. You want to keep that dialogue going and find out, what do you like? What do you want to try that's different? What do you not like? Because there's nothing worse than having employees do things that they hate. Also, when it comes to compassion, we talked about empathy already. This is where we have to remember everybody is human. We all have very busy personal lives. For those of you that have kids going back to school, I just shipped a couple of kids off to college. We all have a lot going on in our personal lives. And as managers and leaders, we need to remember that it's not all about work. Everybody else has things going on, and we need to make sure we're striking that work-life balance. Also, another reminder, every 7 days is kind of the standard where you should check in with your employee, thank them for doing something, praise them for good work. And when I say that, I don't mean throw a party. What I mean is send them a quick email and say, hey, I overheard that conversation you had with a customer. I could tell you really made that customer have a better experience. Or for those of you that maybe have remote employees, same thing, customer contacted me to say that you really helped them with that order or helped make their day better or whatever it is. Or you got that report in 2 days early that really helped the team, so we had more time to process the data. That kind of stuff. Little things can make a really big difference. And then, of course, stability, making people feel comfortable at work, that the rug's not going to be pulled out from under them in this sometimes wild world that we're living in. That can help a lot too. Also, that hope, looking forward to the future to help keep people engaged is really, really important. And then also, when we're focusing on our strengths, we want to make sure that we remember to do that. Because when managers are ignoring people, that's when they're going to feel disengaged. When they're focusing on the negative, focusing on weaknesses, people are going to say, that's it, I'm out of here, because I'm going to find a place that doesn't focus on that as much. But when somebody focuses on an individual's strengths, what they're doing well, the chances of being disengaged are so much lower. So that's why we want to make sure we are constantly working with our employees, talking with our employees to find out what they want at work. So kind of that big pyramid I was showing you can kind of be boiled down into this. We want to have a people first culture. Work is wonderful, businesses are great, but we have to have people to run those businesses. So we need to make sure we continually focus on them. Emotional intelligence is so important. We want to make sure, again, we're looking at people, we're helping them out, we're figuring out what they need. CEA has some wonderful, we're all about compliance at CEA because we deal with labor law issues in California, but we have an amazing team of learning and development professionals that will teach you all sorts of things when it comes to soft skills that can be really, really beneficial to you. We have a whole lead program for new supervisors or supervisors that need a little more training. So I would encourage you to take a look at some of those that might be really beneficial to you if you're feeling like you're not as connected to your employees. We also want to make sure our employees have purpose, that they have direction. So that comes from us as leaders, making sure people know what they're supposed to be doing. We also make sure that hope, again, that future looking forward, are we giving them development and growth? And of course, are we including them in all of the things that they need to be included when they're remote? We know that's harder, but we want to make sure, again, we're keeping a diverse group, we're keeping a group that we're including in all of our things, if they're in person or remote. So there's a lot of great tools that we can use. So let's talk a little bit about coaching and why we always need to remember the ABC, right? Always be coaching. If they're in front of us or if they are remote, we need to make sure we're staying connected. When you think about coaching, I really want you to think of it as a conversation, because we always need to be checking in with our employees on good things and not such great things, because we want to make sure that we're staying on top of it. So it kind of helps keep us in line as well, that we're documenting conversations with our employees, we're checking in with them, again, seeing what's going well, what's not going well, redirecting if it's necessary, especially when you start to see some patterns of maybe not great behavior. Oftentimes that can be corrected with coaching. So we want to make sure as soon as we catch things getting a little off course, we want to course correct as soon as we can. And also, this is going to help us in the long term when I start to talk about performance management here in just a little bit, because we should always be coaching, and we should kind of keep a running record of things that are going great, when people take on new projects, when they step in to help a coworker, when they get something done or take an initiative that no one else was doing or come up with a new idea. We want to make sure we're keeping a running record of that so that we can reference it later on when we're doing their annual performance review or a mid-year check-in, whatever it is. So we always want to make sure we are coaching at all times. Now, when it comes to being a coach versus a boss, you might think of that traditional idea of what a boss is. This is someone who's pretty heavy-handed. They talk a lot. They're just giving people orders and telling them what to do. They're probably assigning a lot more blame than they should. They're, aloof, they're distant. That's a boss. That's kind of that heavy-handed boss, if you're thinking of a traditional, not so great negative idea of a boss, as opposed to a coach. Or often, as you'll hear at CEA, we say, be a leader, not a boss. A leader is a good coach. So that is somebody who's going to listen. They're going to ask the questions. They don't dominate conversations. They ask a lot of open-ended questions as opposed to yes or no questions to get that other person talking. They're looking at new opportunities, new ideas. They want to get people to buy into things. People aren't going to buy into things if you just tell them what to do. If you ask them about it, ask how they would go about it, what changes they would like to see, new things that they would like to take on, you're going to have a lot more buy-in, and that's going to be better for you. It's going to make your job a little easier because you're getting that employee to talk about what they want to do, and so you're going to have probably a more productive employee. A coach also takes responsibility. If you mess up, if you make a mistake, you own it and you say, gosh, I'm sorry about that. Shouldn't have done that, or that's not the correct email, or I gave you the wrong date, or I misunderstood that email, whatever it is. We have to be able to own up to our mistakes, because remember, we are all human and we can make mistakes. But when we make mistakes, we need to make sure we apologize, we work on recovery, and then we move on with it and we don't make that mistake again. But it's important also for our employees to see us make mistakes as leaders, because then they know, well, I can make a mistake and the world won't end. We have to remember that happens too. So we've got to make sure we're staying on top of it and being responsible for our own actions as well. And of course, a coach is going to check in with somebody, right? You can't coach by yourself. So you need to make sure you're coaching somebody, you're staying in touch that once every 7 days. Whenever it's appropriate, you want to make sure you're checking in with your employees. So when we're thinking about creating that coaching culture, which is something I encourage you to take a look at, your work group in general, your office, I know we've got people with very large companies and smaller companies. It doesn't matter. You can kind of develop this coaching culture regardless of how many employees you have. But the whole idea is to figure out, how can we make other people successful? Because when we make our employees successful, that's going to help us be more successful. So that'll help us when we're thinking about coaching. Again, getting their involvement, getting their engagement, that's going to help us figure out what's working and what's not working. And if something is not working, how can we as a coach help that person figure out how to get around that obstacle so that it can be more, they can be more productive. And then we also want to always be looking ahead, right? We're thinking about that next step, that next project, that next quarter. And we want to make sure we've got our employees who will buy into that so we can all keep moving forward and keep the company successful. So we're going to break these down one by one, kind of the 3 main requirements of coaching. We need to make sure we establish expectations. And if you've been talking to CEA, you know how important we talk about this all the time. We talk about having policies. We talk about having handbooks, having procedures. All of those things are establishing expectations for your employees. The same thing applies when we're talking about coaching. And we also have to make sure we continually coach. Now, I know you are all very busy. You're running departments, you're running companies, perhaps you're the owner, you're in charge of a division or a plant manager. You have a lot going on, and you can't devote your entire day, most likely, to coaching. But that's okay, because you're busy. You've got your own things going on. But it's one of those things that we can't coach for a couple of days in March and then go ahead and revisit that in September. So we need to make sure we're carving out time every day, every week, whatever is appropriate for your group, to make sure we're checking with our employees and we are coaching. We're going to continually coach. And then we also want to make sure we're creating accountability. But that's why it's so important that we set those expectations so employees know what they are supposed to do, what's expected of them, and what will happen if they don't meet those expectations, because we need to hold people accountable. Now, this also means we need to hold ourselves accountable, which means we need to check in with employees. If we say, hey, let's revisit this particular issue in 30 days, you better make sure you revisit it in 30 days, because there's nothing worse than you as a manager setting up some sort of expectation or goal and then you forget about it, because the employee is going to think, well, it must not be very important because they forgot about it and didn't follow up with me. So we need to hold ourselves accountable as well. So let's talk about setting those clear expectations. We need to make sure that the employee understands what all the elements are of a particular task or a project, whatever you're asking them to do. We want to make sure they know what those expectations are and what those markers are going to be. We also need to make sure we're showing the big picture, because remember, a boss would just say, hey, get that report to me by Friday at 5. A coach would say, hey, I need you to get that report to me by Friday at 5. This is going to help us take a look at the past quarter, figure out what was working, what wasn't working, so we can determine if we need to make any changes moving forward for the end of 2025. So connecting it back makes a big difference, as opposed to just giving someone a task. And again, we want to make them mutual. We want to ask employees, do they have a different suggestion for how to do this? Do they have a different idea for a process or something along those lines? Give them the opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to change everything that you want to do. You still have your end goal in mind. But again, when we can give people clear expectations, ask for their buy-in, it makes a big difference. Also, we've said it, document, document, document. As with everything, policies, procedures, coaching, goals and expectations, write it down. Make sure everybody's on the same page. Maybe that's sending a follow-up email to the employee after you set those expectations. Maybe it's asking them, hey, can you send me a follow-up email with the steps that you're going to take so you can have that report to me by Friday at 5? I want to make sure we're on the same page. Absolutely, that is fine. You can do that, because that's how we're going to make sure that there's not any miscommunication when it comes to making sure we've got our goals set and everybody's on the same page. We're agreeing to do everything we're supposed to do. Now, when it comes to continually coaching, we've said it before and we'll say it again, make sure your feedback is specific. Sometimes, and again, I know we're busy, or we sometimes might be a little lazy, where we might say to somebody, hey, you're doing a great job. Well, what does that mean, right? Does that mean they've never made any mistake? Probably not. What we want to say is we want to be a little more clear. You're doing really well, pulling all of that data and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet and sending me those graphs every day so I can take a look at them, so that we'll be prepared for our meeting at the end of the week. Whatever it is, make sure you're very specific on what's going well and what's not going well. Again, we need to make sure we're timely and we're staying on top of goals and expectations so that we're checking in and we don't forget about our employees. We want to make sure we're always, again, looking at that big picture. We want to have a goal in mind so we can help our employees get there, so they can develop those skills that we want them to have and that they want to have as well. When it comes to when things aren't going as well, make sure, again, you're professional, you're staying objective, and of course, we're always tactful. So if there's some sort of issue, if you've got an employee who's having an attendance issue, or if they are not maybe understanding how they're supposed to do a particular project or a report for you, that's when we call them in one-on-one. We don't want to say anything in front of a team meeting where we're going to embarrass someone, set them apart, anything like that. We want to make sure we're always coaching respectfully. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to make sure we have those frequent check-ins. We don't want to just give someone a project and then say, see you in 3 months. That's not going to work out well for anybody, most likely. So we need to make sure we're always staying in touch. And then when it comes to that accountability, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we have our employees participate in that goal setting. So this is where you can ask them, what do we think all of our goals should be? Let's mutually agree on what they should be. Ask them, see what their feedback is going to be. Make sure you align your goals with the big picture. And this is where you as a manager or leader or owner might have a better idea of what truly the big picture is, and your employees may not know what that is. Maybe it's that you're trying to reach a particular financial goal. Maybe it's you're hoping to reach these goals so that you might be able to merge with another company or take on a new product or move or open a new branch somewhere. So let people know kind of those the who, what, where, when, whys. Share that information with them so they can feel that they're part of it. Sometimes a little more transparency can really go a long way to getting your employees to be engaged and to buy into what you're doing. The other thing to remember is things change, right? Goals can change, plans can change, timelines can change. So that's why we need to make sure that we have those check-ins so that you can stay on track. There's nothing worse than an employee working on a project, getting it to you when they're supposed to get it to you, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, you know what, we're not doing that anymore. Or that wasn't actually due till next week, or anything like that. That's going to throw people off. So we need to make sure we're all staying on the same page. Of course, we have to remain flexible. Things change, product gets delayed, employees are sick or on a leave of absence, or unexpected changes occur. So be flexible. Of course, give yourself a little bit of time to be flexible, but make sure, again, you're checking in so you're keeping that dialogue going. And as we create that culture of communication and culture of coaching, we're going to have a culture of accountability. So we need to make sure that we're holding people to the same standards. One of the reasons employers get in trouble in California that we see a lot is being inconsistent. So if you've joined us for a handbook webinar where we've talked about policies, we say, if you have a policy, you need to be prepared to enforce it, and you need to be prepared to enforce it consistently. Same thing when it comes to setting goals. We want to make sure that we set goals and we manage them consistently. If you have one employee or two employees who aren't reaching a goal that's been set for the group, and neither of them reach it and they're supposed to reach it, you need to make sure you're being consistent in how you are coaching them, because you don't want things to lead to claims of favoritism or discrimination or anything like that. So make sure that you are being as consistent as you can. So when it comes to asking questions, right, we talked before about how important it is open-ended questions, questions to get people thinking. Oftentimes, the best questions are short questions. We sometimes want to go into too much information, too much dialogue, where really sometimes the best questions are short. They are very focused. We want to make sure we're trying to give employees questions that they can wrap their head around so that they can give us the best answer, the information that we're looking for. We want to make sure that they are relevant and that they are constructive, because we want to be able to find out exactly what this employee thinks about it. And if we give them 80 different things to think about, that's probably not the best thing. We need to break it down. We want to make sure that we're figuring out the best way to do something, the best way to support them, what we need to do moving forward, so that we're, again, all on the same page, we are being consistent, and that we're getting to the point that we all need to be. So here's a couple of examples of some of those coaching questions. So what goal do you want to achieve as an employee? What is it you're looking out for? What are your first steps? That will get the person thinking about it. Really, that narrows it down. What's the first thing you're going to do? Sometimes when we break things down into smaller components, it helps me as a person. I think it helps people a lot too. Ask people, what support do they need? Somebody might not need any support and they'll say, I'm just fine. Somebody else might say, you know what, I'm going to need somebody 10 hours a week to help me on this project. Or I really need a new computer. My computer doesn't have the software or the capability that I need to get this project done. Sometimes it's a tech issue. Sometimes it's a person issue. Sometimes it might be, I need to work at different hours because maybe I'm working with someone on the East Coast. So I need to adjust my schedule so that that person and I can have the most effective time together. So I need to start my day at 6 a.m. versus starting at 8 or 9 a.m. So those are the questions you want to make sure you're asking. And then, of course, we're asking what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change, what should we do in a different way or in a different sequence, what's causing you to not meet this goal or to not be successful. I think that's a really powerful question, because oftentimes employees are too embarrassed or too self-conscious to say they're having a problem because they don't want to be a failure in your eyes. So when you can ask them, hey, are there any obstacles or anything that's driving you crazy or things that aren't working that we should try, or those resources that you need, that can sometimes open the floodgates and you can get some really good feedback back. So I encourage you, use that as kind of one of your coach cards where you ask that and just say, what's not working? What's an obstacle? What can I help you with? It's really, really powerful. So when it comes to feedback for our employees, there's all different kinds of feedback. You might be kind of like, what are these new words? Of course, we all know negative feedback. That's things that have happened in the past that didn't go well, that you might focus on. There's positive feedback, things that are going well. You did great with that customer. I really appreciate you, saving that customer. They were going to cancel on us, but I could tell over the phone you did a great job, or they sent me an email saying you did such a good job. These other two you might not have heard of, but I think you're probably doing them, but maybe they just haven't been defined for you. But negative feed forward. So that means an employee has done something in the past, and we keep talking about them avoiding doing that in the future. So for example, you have been tardy 3 times in the past month. You need to make sure that in the next month you don't have any additional tardies, or that's going to be subject to our attendance policy. So that's one of those. You're talking about what's happened in the past that's not great. They need to make sure they're avoiding that in the future as well. And then on the opposite side, we have the positive feed forward. So that's something that they've been doing great, that you want them to continue to do great. So, you've been great. You've been on time every single day, and you've been able to answer the phones as our front office receptionist. Really appreciate that. I need to make sure that you're continuing to be here at 7:50 every morning, so that by 8 a.m. when customer calls start coming in, you're ready to go. Those kind of things. So there's all different types of definitions when it comes to the feedback. However you're giving the feedback, you want to make sure that it is clear, it is concise, it is fact-based, and it is objective. We want to make sure we're avoiding emotions, we're avoiding any feelings. We're really sticking to the facts. We're sticking to what that person needs to do to be successful in the job. So that's why here at CEA, we also really encourage you to have job descriptions, have updated job descriptions for your positions so that you can manage your employees consistently and effectively. So when it comes to feedback, same thing applies. You want to make sure you are honest, you're sincere, again, you're specific. So people know you don't want to use those subjective terms like, just keep being nice, doing great, keep being nice. Well, that's good. But how about something like, we always want to make sure that we answer the phone before it has rung 3 times. When you answer the phone, make sure you use our standard greeting, which is this, XYZ. Those are a little more specific than, hey, just be nice. We can give some more specific and more direct or more direction to our employees than that. We want to make sure that we are positive, we are clear to them. We want to make sure we're, again, sharing as much information as we need to share, being as transparent as we need to share. We always want to make sure we're focusing on those specific behaviors. Again, take the emotion out of it. We want to talk about any particular issues they might be having with where they're working, if they're working at multiple job sites, if everything's fine when they're in the office, but things aren't so great when they're at home. We want to make sure we're striking that balance so that we're addressing each of those specifically. As always, respect, and as we say at CEA, good faith and fair dealing goes a long way in California. So be kind, be courteous, make sure, again, you're objective, you're fact-based, we don't get wrapped up in the emotion. We make sure we're always holding ourselves to a very high standard. Because when we as leaders are empathetic, when we are communicating clearly, it helps everything. It helps with innovation, engagement, retention, work-life balance, inclusivity, all of those things. When employers have good empathy skills, it really can have a huge impact on their employees and really keeping employees around and keeping the workforce moving forward, which is, of course, our goal for everything. When it comes to keeping, again, everybody engaged, we also want to look at our coworker relationships. It's a very important question to ask your employees. Who are you able to work well with? Do you have challenges? Maybe sometimes you can move people around a little bit if necessary. We want to make sure, again, our employees' voices are being heard, because that's important so that they know that we are listening, even if perhaps they are not correct with some of the things they're saying, or they have misinterpreted things. At least we're giving them a chance to talk about them and that they can share thoughts or concerns that they have. Another important thing is recognition. Again, as I mentioned before, that 1 day in every 7 is how you should be recognizing your employees or checking in with them, thanking them for their work. Another thing to remember is we also want to make sure that if we have things that are going on in the office, that maybe our remote employees can't participate in. Maybe you have monthly lunches, or maybe you have some sort of perks that the office people have. Keep in mind, you can still give your employees who are working outside fun things too. So you can send them little gift cards, Grubhub gift cards. You can send them snack packs. You know, you can't be in person at the meeting, but I wanted to send you the snack pack so you can enjoy a snack with us while we have our team Zoom or whatever it is. So there are lots of different ways that you can keep those employees engaged, regardless of where they are, and make them feel, again, like they're inclusive, like they are part of your work group. Lots of employees, as you're dealing with your remote workers, and I know you've probably gone through some changes, hybrid versus fully remote over the past couple of years. There is a very large emphasis, though, in general from employees when they are surveyed about having flexibility. So what I would encourage you to try to look at ways to be as flexible as possible. If that is certain days at home versus certain days in the office, if it's even different work hours, if that's something that works for your business model, absolutely. You know, is the 9 to 5 essential, 8 to 5? Maybe you can do the 7 to 4, or maybe you can do the 6 to 3. Maybe that will give you some leverage as a business and being able to connect with more customers. So take a look at the big picture, see what you can be flexible about. If you can't be, if your hours just need to be the hours, that's okay. But look for other ways. Maybe you can adjust lunch times a little bit. Of course, still being compliant with California lunch requirements, but maybe some people need to take an earlier lunch because they need to take their kids to school, or maybe they want to adjust hours on certain days. So take a look at what you can do to just keep your employees engaged, keep them happy to be working with you, because that's the whole goal. We want to make sure that our employees feel that they're connected and they're part of the workforce. And these are just a couple of suggestions. These are goals that have come back, or employee engagement goals that we're looking for, just feedback from your employees. Ideally, you want them to say, and again, it starts at the very beginning, onboarding experience really made me feel part of the company. I knew what the roles and expectations were for me. I know what the company's mission and vision is. It's not a bad idea once a year to have a team meeting and just remind everybody, here's our mission, here's our vision. Do we need to update it? Do we need to revise it? Are there things that we should change? It's very important for employees to know who they can go to, especially when they're remote. They might think, well, my manager's only in the office this day and this day. What if I miss him? Who else could I talk to? For those of you that have multiple locations, if you have different states, perhaps your HR is located in a different state, make sure your employees always know who they can talk to. If it's different managers, different supervisors, different board of directors, whatever it is, make sure your employees have that information so that they know what they need to do. So let's spend a couple of minutes talking about performance management, because that's really everything we've been talking about really leads to performance management. And there's two different types of performance management or evaluation. So evaluation is really that once a year where you sit down and have that formal performance review, as opposed to performance management, which is really that ongoing process of monitoring performance. And that's everything that we've really been talking about as we try to keep our employees engaged. As you know, there's lots of benefits, right? We've talked about it's going to give individuals direction. We're going to make sure we're giving them feedback. We want to make sure we're giving them input, and we are keeping them motivated. So those are all the benefits for employees. And this is, I know everyone has the slides. These are things that you can share with your team. If sometimes people are thinking like, well, why do I have to manage performance? Or why do I have to be a good coach? These little ideas can sometimes be a good reminder of why we need to make sure we're staying in touch with our employees, and why we are always coaching, so that we can keep managing that performance, so we can keep people on track. But sometimes people need to see the benefit for the employer or for the business. And this is where those hard numbers come into play. Productivity goes up dramatically when you are keeping your employees engaged, and when we're constantly and proactively managing that performance. Also, when it comes to retention, as I was mentioning before, it's so expensive to replace an employee. So we want to keep our employees engaged. And then there it is, that word again, document. We need to make sure we're documenting everything. We document those coaching discussions. We document our annual performance reviews or stay interviews, which we'll talk about in just a second. Document, document, document. It protects you as a business, and it gives you some legal protection. but also it makes your life a little easier because you are so busy. It's hard to remember, what did I talk with that person about 3 months ago or 6 months ago? When you've written it down, it makes it much easier to refer to it. Some of the bad things and some of the good things, because we need to remember, look at that whole picture. And also, it gives a lot of valuable feedback from your employees to you about the company, about their role, about changes. And it can help the company really stay on top of it because we can all get complacent. So it's really effective to make sure we're hearing that feedback, and makes a big difference for the company overall. Remember, when we're talking about our one-on-ones, and that's really how we should be meeting with our employees, we want to make sure that we start with some general questions. Again, that small talk, just like we're doing with our big Zoom meetings, we have that small talk with our employees because we need to remember, again, there's a personal and a professional work-life balance. Some employees may not want to share a lot of personal information, and that is perfectly fine, but just general questions. How was your weekend? How are you doing? What can I help you with? That's all we need to do before we get to some of that bigger stuff. We want to make sure you set the agenda for what that meeting should cover. We want to talk about what's going right, what's not going right, if there's any changes to projects or dates or customers or expectations, any of those things. And again, we want to make sure we're still revisiting those goals. Are they still reasonable? Do we need to adjust them? Do we need to pull them back? Do we need to push them out? Or do we need to scrub something that we were working on just because it simply doesn't make sense? Or do we need to delay it until next quarter or next year, just depending on the business needs? So again, it's a two-way dialogue. You're getting that buy-in. You want to make sure you've got a lot of interaction with that. The other idea I wanted to throw out at you, if you are doing maybe those formal annual reviews, coaching can also go hand in hand with something called stay interviews. Now, it's a little more formal than just sitting down and talking with someone. This is actually something at CEA that we do. We do annual reviews for all of our employees, and then we do 6-month stay interviews. Because a lot of employers do exit interviews when people are leaving. That's often when you find out some very interesting information. So instead of waiting until the end of the employment relationship, we encourage you to keep it ongoing during the employee relationship. And you do a stay interview where you ask your current employees what's working, what's not. It's a little more formal. So at CEA, we have about 7 questions, standard questions that we ask all of the employees, and we get asked as employees, just saying, hey, what's great, what's not great? What are you more interested in doing? What are we doing that you think we should change or do differently? And that, again, just gets people engaged, it gets them talking. And then each of your work groups can kind of talk with the next level of management with just a general overview of what people are saying. What are their feelings? What are they thinking about changing or differences that they would like to see in the company? And these are just a couple of suggestions for you. You can develop whatever works best for your organization, but it can really be an effective tool. So I encourage you to take a look at it and see if it might work for you. And then also, when you are working with your employees, again, you want to make sure you're setting up goals, those roles that they're interested in moving into. Maybe they're perfectly fine and happy doing exactly what they're doing, and that's fine too. But you want to make sure you've got objectives. Keep it simple. Again, these are manageable things that people are able and interested in doing and that you want them to do for you. You also want to find out what you can do as a manager. What are changes that you can make? We all have improvements that we can make as individuals, as managers, as owners, whatever it is. We want to also talk about what the employee is going to do, what their timeline expectations are, set those dates. So you say, great, let's revisit this next month, or let's take a look at that in January as we're looking at 2026. So it doesn't have to be immediate. It can be in a couple months. It can be next year, whatever works for you. And put some things down in writing. This can be just a simple email summary back to the individual, or if you're doing it for an entire team, after you meet with them individually, you can put a team summary together. And this is some of the feedback I received, and these are the changes that we're going to make. So again, it's just another way, another tool for you to stay connected with your employees and look at that big picture and how everything can improve as you move forward. Because again, it's good for us to have things to look forward to. And this is just a real quick reminder about how to make work human, just everything that we've been talking about. We want to make sure that we thank our employees, we talk with our employees, and we celebrate those things. So we thank our employees for working hard, for helping to move the company forward. We keep that conversation going. between our employees, our team, management, so that we are really thinking the big picture, being as transparent as we can so people know what the big goal is that we're all moving towards. And then, of course, we celebrate birthdays, celebrate anniversaries, celebrate any of those milestones. Pull in your remote employees however you can. If you're doing cake in the office, you can send your employees, again, treats. You can have things delivered to them so that they, again, feel like they're part of it. So keep them engaged as much as you can. There's different challenges based on where they're located, but you can keep making it fun. If it's a Grubhub gift card, if it's a Starbucks gift card, whatever it is, let them know that you're thinking about them and that they're still part of the team. All right, well, with that, I want to put up the hotline number again. Feel free, again, give us a call Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 888-763-3174. We would love to chat with you about any questions you have about this or any other HR questions that perhaps keep you awake at night. We're available to help you with all of those things. And we have a survey for you here. We would love to get some feedback from you. You can take a snapshot of that. Tell us what's working, what's not working, other trainings that you would like to see. And I'll leave that up for just a second. You need to get out your fancy cameras and let us know, because we would love to hear your feedback, because I hate to tell you, everybody, but 2026 is going to be here before we know it. So we want to make sure we're giving you all the info that you need. If you find that you need a little more help when it comes to HR issues, we have a couple of individual memberships. You will see if you visit our website, many of our forms are behind a member portal. You do have to sign in to see them. You as a hotline can, of course, read all of our newsletters, all of our blogs. We do have lots of links to state and government forms, but if you would like our entire suite of forms, which there's about 200, because we're HR and we like forms, you would need to be a member. So take a look at individual membership. We have monthly membership options available to you, and depending on what your needs are. So give us a call anytime we can help you. And with that, I just want to thank everyone so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Anna so she can go over fancy codes and wrap it up for us. Thanks, everybody.
All right, with a minute to spare, like a pro always. So I did, before, I know the codes are on your screen. So HRCI code today, 713876, SHRM code 25-77KJX. CEAinfo@employers.org, or go ahead and call into your Ventura HR hotline, and we're more than happy to give you guidance on what to do with those codes to make sure you get credit for today. And then if you have not been following along in the chat, I did drop a couple of hopefully helpful resources for you. A while back, Mary mentioned that leadership training. So that is actually starting on Thursday. It's our most popular training. Every time that we launch it, it almost always sells out. So I really encourage you to take advantage that there are a couple seats available for this series. And then we do have an HR 101 series also, magically crafted and perfected by Mary herself. So that's a 4-part series starting on September 9th. So that is something I also encourage you to check out. With that, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I'm trying to see if I can quickly get you the link for the next training that is going. Whoop, there we go, into the chat now. That's happening on September 11th, again at 10 o'clock, covering pay scale and pay data. So that is something also generously sponsored by our partners over at Ventura County. And I want to thank Colleen, Cynthia, Rebecca, the whole team over there behind the scenes for everything that you do, working so hard for Ventura County employers. Thank you, Mary, again, for sharing your time and expertise. And thank you all for joining us live. We look forward to seeing you at the next training in September and talking to you on that HR hotline. Cheers.